There is a distinct quality about individuals who grew up during the 1960s. Perhaps it is the manner in which they handle themselves during a crisis without breaking down. Maybe it is how they can move through doubt with a strange composure. Or perhaps it is that specific mix of hope and realism that seems built into their very soul. Because the 1960s did more than just influence a generation. It built a particular kind of mental structure that specialists are only now starting to grasp. And believe me, by the conclusion of this video, you are going to understand why being raised in that decade produced some of the most mentally complex and tough people on the planet today. Let's begin with something that influenced a 1960s childhood in ways most people never think about. Imagine yourself as a 6-year-old, and every morning at school, you and your friends practice something called crouch and hide routines. The teacher sounds a whistle, and you scramble under your desk, putting your head between your knees, protecting yourself from a make-believe atomic explosion. You did not fully grasp what atomic war meant, but you understood enough. You knew that somewhere out there, people possessed weapons that could finish everything, that the world your parents created for you could disappear in a flash of light, that the desk you were crouching under likely would not protect you from anything real. This was not trauma in the way we usually define it. It was something more unusual. You learned to live with two opposing facts at once. The world might end tomorrow, yet you still have to complete your schoolwork tonight. Experts call this useful mental conflict, but for 1960s kids, it was just a normal day. Here's what's amazing. Instead of producing a generation of worried, stuck adults, this constant shadow of a world-ending threat created something unexpected: people who formed an unusual bond with doubt. When you have trained for the end of the world before your 7th birthday, normal problems lose some of their ability to frighten you. Losing a job? At least it is not atomic destruction. Relationship issues? The world is still here. This generation learned early that stressing over things outside your power wastes valuable energy. They built what researchers now call a clever form of mental sorting, an ability to separate problems into things I can change and things I must accept. Not because they studied it in a book, but because they felt it in their bones during those routines. Now, let's discuss something that occurred on a Sunday evening in February 1964. You are sitting in your front room, the entire family is gathered around the TV, and 4 young men from Liverpool show up on The Ed Sullivan Show. The shouting from the crowd is so loud you can hardly hear the tunes. Your big sister is sobbing, your parents look puzzled and a bit worried. But you are seeing something you don't have descriptions for yet: the start of a cultural shift. The Beatles did more than just change music. They showed an entire generation that the world could change in an instant, that 4 ordinary guys could rattle the pillars of society, that what seemed solid and permanent could become old-fashioned in the length of a single TV show. This was meaningful in ways that went far beyond hair length and music choices. 1960s kids learned early that change is not something that happens slowly over decades. It can happen right now. This produced adults who are not scared by disruption the way other generations often are. They have seen entire social worlds shift under their feet and stayed standing. They know that what looks radical today becomes standard tomorrow, and what looks permanent today might be gone by next year. But here's the mental twist. While they saw extreme change, they also lived through one murder after another. JFK, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, all within 5 years. They watched their idols get taken away, their dreams broken on live TV. They learned that growth is not a straight line, that the good guys do not always win, that hope and sadness are permanent partners in the human journey. This mix, bold hope tempered by constant loss, created a specific mental profile. People who believe change can happen, but who are not naive about the pain, who can have hope without being silly, who understand that struggling for something better does not ensure you will live to see the result. This is not bitterness. It is wisdom bought at a very high cost. Let's move to something more personal. Imagine you are 8 years old, and your mother gives you a few coins and sends you to the local shop alone. You walk there by yourself, cross the streets, pick what you want, give the money, check your change, and walk home. This was not a special honor. This was just how life worked. Children in the 1960s handled real cash from a young age, not plastic cards that make digits show up and vanish on screens, but real coins that had weight in your pocket, paper notes you could fold and unfold. You learned that money was limited because you could see it leaving your hand as you bought things. This physical bond with cash created brain paths that modern kids simply do not build. You understood cause and effect in a deep way. Spend these coins on sweets and they're gone. Save them and they grow.
There is no digital number on a screen to separate you from the reality of the trade. What experts now call financial control, the ability to wait for rewards, plan for the future, and grasp the true cost of items, was being built into these children through daily life. They were not studying money, they were feeling it leave their fingers or grow in their banks. And the freedom did not stop at the shop. Imagine this, it's 7:30 in the morning and you are walking to school. You are 6 years old, maybe 7. There is no parent next to you, no adult observing from afar. Just you, your books held under your arm because bags had not become popular yet, and the path you have memorized through the streets. You walk past the house where the loud dog stays and cross to the other side. You wave to Mrs. Patterson, who is always tending her plants. You meet the Thompson kids at the corner, and you walk the rest of the way together. This daily trip was not just travel, it was schooling. You learned to read your surroundings, to notice when something was different or off. You built internal maps, not just of roads, but of social scenes. Which adults were kind, which houses to pass quickly, which paths were safe. Brain scientists have found that this kind of independent travel in childhood grew spatial logic, risk-checking, and self-reliance in ways that being driven everywhere simply cannot match. Your brain was literally being shaped by freedom every single morning before you even entered the classroom. Now let's talk about what happened when you got hurt. Because you did get hurt. You fell off your bike going down a slope too fast.
You cut your knees climbing trees. You burned yourself on a science kit that would never pass today's safety rules. You got hit in the face playing ball without a mask. And when you came home messy or bruised, your parents said something that would sound almost harsh by today's rules. You're fine. Go back outside. Your parents had confidence in you. Confidence that you could handle pain. Confidence that you would learn from the mistake. Confidence that protecting you from every cut and bruise would hurt you more than the wounds themselves. Here is what this built mentally. People who do not make a disaster out of pain, who understand that being hurt and being broken are not the same thing, who can feel discomfort without thinking something is deeply wrong. Burns, cuts, and marks were not crises to be stopped at all costs. They were proof of a life being lived. Modern psychology is finally realizing what 1960s parents seemed to know by instinct. Children need to face manageable trouble to develop what researchers call stress toughness. Small bits of difficulty build mental strength, and 1960s kids got plenty of small bits. But the risks were not just physical. Think about this. It is a Saturday afternoon and you are in the driveway with your father, the front of the family car open. He gives you a tool and shows you how the engine functions. Or maybe you are with your mother, learning to use the sewing machine, the needle very close to your small fingers. Children in the 1960s were trusted with real equipment, real duty, real results. The toy oven was not just a toy, it was a real machine that got hot enough to cook actual food. You could hurt yourself. That was the point. Learning to be careful around things that could cause pain was part of the lesson. This produced adults who are not scared by complexity, who assume they can figure out how things work, who do not automatically call a professional for every issue. They grew up taking things apart and fixing them. They learned that most machines and most troubles are less confusing than they first look. Let's talk about waiting, real waiting, the kind that modern people have almost totally forgotten how to do. You want to see a new film? The cinema in town has 1 or 2 screens. Movies change every week or two. You see what is showing, or you wait. There is no streaming, no watching on demand, no I'll just watch it later. If you miss it, you might never see it. You want to hear your favorite track? You sit by the radio hoping the presenter plays it. You cannot skip to it. You cannot download it. You wait. And when it finally starts, you rush to hit record on the tape deck, hoping you don't miss the start. You want to know what happens next on your favorite show? You wait a week. The mystery stays in your mind unsolved for 7 long days. There is no binge watching, no jumping ahead, just waiting. This pattern of wanting and waiting changed the brains of a whole generation. They built what experts call waiting power to an amazing level. They know in their hearts that good things are worth the time, that the wait itself is a kind of joy, that not everything needs to be ready right now to be useful. In a world of instant prizes, people who grew up in the 1960s carry this ability for patience like a hidden strength. They do not panic when things take time. They do not need constant noise to feel happy. They learned early that the gaps between getting what you want are not blank. They are full of something: imagination, hope, and life. Now imagine a summer night in 1965. The street lamps have just come on, which means you have maybe 10 more minutes before you must be home. You are in someone's yard with 8 other kids from the block,
finishing a game of tag or ball or some mixed-up game you made up that afternoon that has rules only you understand. There are no adults there. No one is watching, no one is judging. When someone fights about whether they were tagged or not, you settle it yourselves. When feelings get hurt, you figure out how to keep going. When the little kids cannot keep up, you decide together whether to include them or send them away. Every social hurdle is yours to cross. This daily work in human connections created something amazing. People who can read a room in a second, who feel tension before it shows, who understand that what people say and what they mean are often different. They became experts in human behavior not because they read about it, but because their place in the group depended on knowing it. You learned whose house you could enter without knocking, and whose parents wanted a formal hello at the door. You learned which kids would tell on you and which ones would stay quiet. You learned how to be part of a team while still being yourself. These were not lessons taught in a school. They were gathered through thousands of hours of unwatched social time, and they made adults with high social intelligence, the ability to handle complex people stuff with total ease. But some moments went deeper than social learning. Think about what it was like to be a child on July 20th, 1969. You are sitting in front of the TV, maybe at home, maybe in a schoolroom, watching blurry video of something impossible. A man in a heavy white suit is stepping onto the ground of the moon. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. You are watching the limit of human potential grow in real time. Everything your parents said was impossible, everything the world said could not be done is happening right in front of you. Face their own giant problems, they took this with them. They had seen the impossible become possible. They had watched people reach for the stars and actually touch them. That kind of moment does not go away. But that hope lived alongside something darker. The 1960s were also the decade when night news shows started showing clips from Vietnam. Real fighting, real loss, real people being moved through forests. You would be having dinner and the TV would show things that children today are carefully kept from. This sight did not break them in the usual way. It taught them. They understood at a young age that the world had real darkness, that safety was not promised, that adults did not always choose well, that leaders could be wrong, even terribly wrong. This made a generation with a complex view of organizations. They respect skill, but not just titles. They follow leaders who prove they can be trusted, not those who just demand it.
They learned young that asking questions of those in power is not rude. Sometimes it is required. And yet, despite everything, despite the killings and the war clips and the atomic drills, despite watching their idols fall and their dreams break, there is something almost stubborn about the hope of 1960s kids. Because they also recall the March on Washington. They recall the Civil Rights Act being signed. They recall watching the world shift because people believed it could and refused to accept that it wouldn't. They hold both facts at the same time. The world can be dark, and the world can get better. Growth is possible, but not certain. Hope is smart, but not blind. This mental depth, this ability to believe and doubt at once, might be their most prized gift. Let's go back to something more small-scale. Imagine yourself on a Saturday morning, and the TV is playing cartoons. You watch for a bit, but then something happens. The shows end. The channel stops or changes to something dull, and you are left with a choice. Sit in a quiet house or go find something to do. So you go out. You walk to your buddy's house and knock on the door. You look at the stream behind the street. You build something out of old wood. You lay in the grass and look at clouds. You get bored, and then you get creative. This cycle of boredom leading to making things happened again and again through 1960s childhoods. There was no endless scrolling, no non-stop video, no system designed to grab and keep your focus. There was just time, empty time, waiting to be used by whatever you could think of. Scientists have found that boredom starts the brain's default mode, the parts responsible for creativity, thinking about yourself, and linking ideas others miss. Every time a 1960s kid stared at a ceiling or walked around on a summer day, their brain was doing big work. They just didn't know it. These are adults who can sit in quiet without feeling uneasy, who do not need constant noise to feel fine, who can be alone with their thoughts because they have had so much training in it. In a time of constant distraction, this ability for stillness is getting rare and more important. Now, think about what happened when something went wrong. You failed a quiz. You lost a match. You were not chosen for the team. And here is what did not happen. No one ran in to fix your mood. No one gave you a trophy for just showing up. No one acted like you had won when you had clearly lost. You felt the full weight of sadness, shame, or failure. And then something great happened. You got through it. The world did not stop. The feeling left, and you learned something priceless. You can handle more than you think. This was not mean behavior called character building. It was reality. Sometimes you lose. Sometimes you fail.
Sometimes things do not go your way, and there is nothing anyone can do except help you stand back up. 1960s kids got this lesson early and often. What experts now call failure strength, the ability to hit blocks without falling apart, was being built into them through many small letdowns that no one tried to stop or fix. They learned that failure has data, that losing shows you things winning never can, that toughness is not the lack of struggle, but the power to keep moving in spite of it. These people hold something the modern world really needs. They recall what it felt like to be trusted, to be left alone, to work things out without someone watching their every move. They recall when childhood was a bit risky and very free. They are living proof that toughness is not something you are born with, it's something you build. That being capable comes from trying, not from being guarded. That the best gift you can give someone is not a clear road, but the self-belief to handle whatever comes their way. In a world of rising worry and weakness, they stand as proof of a different path. Not a perfect path, not a path without costs, but a path that made people who can survive storms, adjust to change, and keep hope even when hope looks foolish. They grew up in a decade of murders and moonwalks, of social shifts and atomic scares, of massive freedom and huge loss. And somehow, maybe because of all of it, they learned to carry it all. The hope and the pain, the fun and the sadness, the belief that things can improve, and the knowledge that they might not. That is the mental makeup of people who grew up in the 1960s, and it is a mental makeup we might all gain from understanding a bit more.